Hey brothers and sisters, Steve Monette here with another video in my Bible Prophecy Bites series where we look at Bible scripture, history, and current events that all point to the soon return of Jesus the Christ. So for today's video, I want to talk about the recent decision by the Trump administration to remove all U.S. troops from Syria. Now, many of you are probably asking, why is this so important and why is this so prophetically important? So I want to try and answer that question in very simple to understand terms, and quite surprisingly, I have not seen a video that really covers these basics over the last 24 hours, so hopefully this video fills that void, at least temporarily. In the simplest of terms, this move by the Trump administration to remove these troops out of Syria is directly related to the Gog and Magog war, and not in a good way, I might add. Let me give you a brief 30-second history for you. Up until yesterday, the USA had approximately 1,500 to 2,000 troops in Syria that were primarily acting as military advisors and training officers for the Turkish rebels who were located in northern Syria. In addition, the USA was also supplying electronic intelligence to Turkish forces in their effort to eradicate ISIS. But here is why the decision to remove all U.S. troops from Syria is so important from a biblical and prophetic perspective. While the U.S. force in Syria was very small, as I had said a minute ago, about 2,000 troops, they were in essence accomplishing two very significant missions. And the first mission was related to global strategy, and the second mission was related to Bible prophecy. Now, they may not have even known that they were on the second mission, but we'll talk about that in a minute. The first strategy that I spoke of, which I'm calling the global strategy, was to arm and train the Kurdish rebels and to provide intelligence to Turkey in order for them to defeat ISIS in that part of the world. Now, in addition, the U.S. troops were able to utilize our own air assets to help defeat ISIS by, shall I say, arranging for a large number of ISIS fighters to meet their 70 virgins in heaven. I think we all know what that means. But as of today, October 7th, 2019, that mission to defeat ISIS does seem to have been accomplished. However, do not be fooled. ISIS will come back to life at some point in the near future. And we all know how demonic and evil and sadistic ISIS was. They needed to be eradicated, plain and simple. But they will come back. Rest assured on that. But let's talk a minute about the prophetic mission that the U.S. troops were on. This mission was clear and simple, and it was a mission of deterrence. Whether planned, known, or not known, the U.S. presence in Syria was acting as a deterrent to keep Turkey from advancing further into Syria. And this was of huge importance because Turkey is better known as Togarmah in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And of course, we all know, represents 1/3 of the Gog Magog Alliance. Well, now that the USA is pulling out of Syria, this will allow Turkey to move military assets further and deeper into Syrian space in preparation for the Gog and Magog war. And there's no one there to stop them now. And they have already publicly said that they intend to move troops and equipment into that region. So this is not just some threat or some small talk. This is actionable intelligence. And now that there is no more deterrence to stop Turkey's advance into Syria, well, then that leaves Israel completely exposed. Israel knows it's exposed, and it is a sitting duck. And to prove that, we have an article that was posted in the Jerusalem Post yesterday, October 7th of 2019, attesting to that very fact. So let me say that again. Now that the USA, the only friend of Israel in the Middle East, is preparing and going to pull out of Syria, there is no deterrence left in the region to stop the Gog and Magog alliance from moving closer to the Israeli border. Now, Iran has nearly 80,000 soldiers and proxies in Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza. Russia has over 100,000 troops already stationed in Syria, and Turkey will now have thousands more troops in Syria. And all are sitting about 55 miles from Israel's border with Syria. Advancing into Israel can be accomplished by military ground vehicle assets in probably less than 24 hours, and air and rocket assaults could begin in hours. So many of you are probably asking the question, does this mean that the Gog and Magog war is about to break out? Well, before I answer that question, let me add a couple more pieces to this puzzle. Now, I've read on some other websites comments and channels that the Gog and Magog war is still years away, since Cush and Put, the other two members of the Gog Magog Alliance, are not even close to being able to attack Israel. Technically, that is true today. The governments of Ethiopia and Libya are barely functioning. Never mind being able in a position to launch an attack into Israel. Just probably not going to happen, on their own. But not all is what it seems. First of all, let's take a look at a map that shows all of the Gog Magog Alliance members and their location relative to Israel. This map was produced by Joel Richardson, who I think has the only map showing the correct biblical locations of the Gog and Magog Alliance members. There are lots and lots of different maps out there, but this one is one that I really like because it very much lines up with the Bible. Okay, big difference between some of the maps that are out there now and this one, which is really Bible based. So I encourage you to dig deeper into that if you're interested. So, according to this news report here, Turkey has moved military assets and troops into Ethiopia. But why is that so important? Well, Ethiopia is better known as Cush in Ezekiel 38. And according to this news report, Russia has moved troops into the Sudan, which is also part of the region of Cush. And finally, according to this news report, Russia has moved their military assets into Libya, otherwise known as Put, in Ezekiel 38. So if you look at the chessboard, you can clearly see that the Gog and Magog and their military assets have surrounded Israel, and they could attack at a moment's notice. And as it stands today, Israel is all alone. The USA has got its own problems right now with the attempted impeachment, or maybe we should say, soft coup. And that will definitely impede the USA's ability to respond to anything, relative to Israel. And if anything were to happen to President Trump, Israel would lose its only friend in the Middle East. So it certainly looks like Israel is in a position where only the Lord can defend them, just as he predicted in the book of Ezekiel some 2,500 years ago. So don't get mad at Trump because he's doing this. He's only doing what God intended him to do, even if Trump doesn't know it yet. So I want to go back to that question. Is the Gog and Magog war about to break out? I don't think so, simply because the Bible describes the Gog and Magog war and the Armageddon war in near identical terms, and Scripture proves that. Those facts cannot be refuted, but with such identical descriptions, it is unlikely that they are separate events. I know many will try and argue that, and I'm not here to argue with you by any stretch of the imagination. But the book of Revelation proves that the Armageddon war occurs after the removal of the church and after 3.5 years of God's wrath on this planet. But make no mistake, the Gog and Magog chess pieces are in place today, at this very moment. And if the chess pieces are already in place today, well, then the removal of the church could be at any time now. So, brothers and sisters, keep looking up, for our redemption is near. Thanks for watching.